The mahogany doors of courtroom 7 swung open with a weight that seemed to carry the gravity of the law itself. And in that moment, everyone present understood that some storms arrive not with thunder, but with silence. If you believe justice should never bow to privilege, show your support by hitting that like button right now. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished wooden benches where spectators sat in hushed anticipation. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, thick with the kind of tension that precedes a reckoning. This was not just another hearing. This was the trial of Victoria Hastings, daughter of Governor Marcus Hastings, a man whose political influence stretched across state lines and whose name had opened doors that remained firmly closed to ordinary citizens. But today, in this room, with its scent of old wood and leather-bound law books, none of that mattered. Today, Victoria would learn that some doors, once closed by justice, cannot be reopened by wealth or connections. Judge Elias Monroe sat at the bench, his silver hair catching the morning light, his weathered face a map of decades spent in service to the law. At 63, he had presided over thousands of cases, witnessed countless displays of human nature at its best and worst, and had long ago learned that the most dangerous criminals were often those who wore expensive suits and believed themselves untouchable. His dark eyes, sharp and penetrating, surveyed the courtroom with the patient watchfulness of a man who had seen every trick, every manipulation, every desperate attempt to corrupt the scales of justice. He said little, but when he spoke, every word carried the weight of absolute authority. Victoria Hastings entered the courtroom like a woman walking into a boutique, not a place of judgment. At 28, she moved with the practiced grace of someone who had never been told no, never faced a consequence she couldn't buy her way out of, never encountered a situation her father's name couldn't resolve. Her designer heels clicked against the marble floor with an arrogance that made several spectators shift uncomfortably in their seats. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people in that room earned in a month, her highlighted hair styled to perfection, her makeup flawless. Behind her walked her attorney, Gerald Pemberton, a silk-suited legal mercenary whose reputation for defending the indefensible was matched only by his astronomical fees. But it was Victoria's demeanor that truly captured attention. The slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth, the way her eyes swept across the courtroom with barely concealed contempt. The casual confidence of someone who believed this entire proceeding was nothing more than an inconvenient formality before her inevitable acquittal. She had crashed her Mercedes into a family's minivan while driving drunk, sending 3 people to the hospital, one of them a 9-year-old girl who would walk with a limp for the rest of her life. Victoria's blood alcohol level had been nearly twice the legal limit. She had attempted to flee the scene. When police arrived, she had laughed and told them, "Do you know who my father is?" The bailiff, a square-shouldered man named Thomas Reeves, who had served in this courtroom for 17 years, stood at attention. His voice rang out clear and commanding. "All rise. The Superior Court of the State is now in session, the Honorable Judge Elias Monroe presiding." The courtroom rose as one, except for Victoria Hastings. She remained seated, examining her manicured nails with studied indifference, as if the bailiff had been addressing someone else entirely. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person in that room felt it. The moment when privilege collided with protocol, when entitlement met the immovable object of judicial authority. Gerald Pemberton's face went pale. He leaned down, whispering urgently in his client's ear, but Victoria simply waved him away with a dismissive flick of her wrist. Judge Monroe settled into his chair with deliberate slowness, his movements measured and calm. He did not look at Victoria immediately. Instead, he arranged the files before him with meticulous care, adjusted his reading glasses, and allowed the silence to stretch until it became almost unbearable. The courtroom remained standing, frozen in this uncomfortable tableau, waiting for someone to break the impasse. Finally, Monroe lifted his eyes. They settled on Victoria with the intensity of a spotlight, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room with crystalline clarity. "Ms. Hastings, you will stand when this court is in session." Victoria looked up slowly, as if noticing him for the first time. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't think so, Your Honor." She pronounced his title with just enough emphasis to make it sound like mockery. "I'm actually quite comfortable where I am." The intake of breath from the gallery was audible. Several reporters in the back row leaned forward, pens poised over notebooks. This was the kind of moment that defined trials, that made headlines, that people would discuss for years to come. Gerald Pemberton closed his eyes briefly, the expression of a man watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. Monroe's expression did not change. Not a flicker of anger, not a trace of surprise. He had been doing this too long to be shocked by arrogance, but he had also been doing this too long to let it stand unchallenged. "Ms. Hastings, let me be absolutely clear. This is not a request. It is a directive from this court. You will stand or you will be held in contempt. There is no third option." Victoria leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs with theatrical leisure. "With all due respect, and honestly, I'm not sure how much respect this situation deserves, I think we both know how this is going to end. My father has already made some calls. The governor's office has been in contact with some very important people. So why don't we skip all this performative authority and get to the part where these ridiculous charges are dismissed?" The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. It was as if the entire courtroom had been suspended in amber, preserving this moment of breathtaking audacity for posterity. Monroe set down his pen with a soft click that seemed loud as a gunshot in the profound quiet. He folded his hands before him, and when he spoke, his voice remained even, controlled, but something in it made Victoria's smile falter for just a fraction of a second. "Ms. Hastings, I have presided over this courtroom for 26 years. In that time, I have seen defendants from every walk of life, every background, every circumstance. I have seen the guilty and the innocent, the remorseful and the defiant, the powerful and the powerless. But what I have never seen in all those years is someone so thoroughly convinced of their own immunity from the law that they would sit before this court and openly threaten it with political interference." He paused, letting those words settle like stones into still water. "Your father is the governor. That is a fact. But let me share another fact with you. This courtroom does not answer to governors. It does not answer to money. It does not answer to political pressure or family names or any of the things you have spent your entire life using as shields against consequences. This courtroom answers only to the law, and today the law requires you to stand." Victoria's face had gone rigid, the smirk replaced by something harder, colder. "You can't talk to me like that. Do you have any idea what my father could do to your career? Miss Hastings, you will stand now, or I will have the bailiff assist you to your feet before holding you in contempt of court. This is your final warning." For a long moment, Victoria remained seated, her jaw set, her eyes defiant. The tension in the room had reached a breaking point. Gerald Pemberton was whispering frantically, his face flushed, his expensive suit suddenly looking a size too small. But Victoria seemed paralyzed between her arrogance and the dawning realization that this judge was not going to bend. Finally, with exaggerated slowness and an expression of profound disdain, Victoria rose to her feet. But even in standing, she managed to convey contempt, slouching deliberately, rolling her eyes, making every inch of her posture a statement of rebellion. "Thank you," Monroe said simply. "You may be seated." He waited until everyone had settled before continuing. "Now let us proceed with the matter at hand. Ms. Hastings, you are charged with driving under the influence causing bodily harm, leaving the scene of an accident, and reckless endangerment. How do you plead?" Victoria opened her mouth to speak, but Gerald Pemberton stood quickly, placing a restraining hand on her shoulder. "Not guilty, Your Honor. My client pleads not guilty to all charges." Monroe nodded and made a notation. The court recognizes the plea. Mr. Pemberton, you may call your first witness. What followed was a masterclass in legal maneuvering versus irrefutable evidence. Pemberton was skilled, there was no denying that. He attacked every witness with surgical precision, questioned every piece of evidence, raised reasonable doubt wherever a shadow existed to exploit. But the facts were damning, and no amount of legal acrobatics could change them. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen, a sharp-minded woman in her late 30s who had built her career on holding powerful people accountable, presented her case with devastating efficiency. First came Officer Marcus Bradley, the first responder who had arrived at the scene. Officer Bradley, please describe what you found when you arrived at the intersection of Maple and 3rd Avenue on the night of August 14th, Chen asked, her voice clear and professional. The officer consulted his notes, though his face suggested he needed no reminder. I arrived at approximately 11:47 p.m. There was a silver Mercedes sedan with front-end damage and a blue Honda minivan with severe damage to the driver's side. The minivan had been T-boned at high speed. Inside the minivan were 3 occupants: Robert Sanchez, age 41, the driver, his wife Maria Sanchez, age 38, and their daughter Emma Sanchez, age 9. All 3 were injured. Emma Sanchez was unconscious and bleeding from a head wound. And where was the defendant? Approximately 200 feet from the scene, attempting to walk away. When I approached her and identified myself as a police officer, she turned and laughed. She said, and I quote, "Thank God I need you to make this go away. Do you know who my father is?" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Monroe's gavel came down once, a sharp crack that restored silence. "Did you detect any signs of intoxication?" Chen continued. "Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hastings had slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, and the strong odor of alcohol on her breath. She was unsteady on her feet and failed a field sobriety test. She initially refused a breathalyzer test, stating that it was beneath her and that her father would have all our badges by morning." "Objection," Pemberton called out, rising smoothly. "Hearsay and prejudicial characterization." "Your Honor, these are the officer's direct observations and the defendant's own words spoken at the scene," Chen countered. Monroe considered for a moment. "Overruled. The officer may testify to what he directly observed and heard." "Continue, Officer Bradley." "We eventually administered a breathalyzer test at the station after obtaining a warrant. Ms. Hastings' blood alcohol content was 0.16, twice the legal limit." The testimony continued, each detail more damning than the last. The prosecution called the tow truck driver who had removed both vehicles from the scene, who testified about the extensive damage consistent with high-speed impact. They called the emergency room doctor who had treated the Sanchez family, who described Emma's fractured skull, Maria's broken ribs, Robert's shattered collarbone. Then came the Sanchez family themselves. Robert Sanchez walked to the witness stand with a slight limp, his arm still in a sling. His wife Maria followed him with her eyes from the gallery, her face drawn with the exhaustion of months spent shuttling between work, hospital visits, and physical therapy sessions for her daughter. When Robert spoke, his voice was steady, but his hands trembled. "We were coming home from Emma's birthday dinner," he said quietly. "She had just turned 9. We'd taken her to her favorite restaurant. Nothing fancy, just a little Italian place she loves. She was so happy, sitting in the back seat, talking about the cake, about her presents. Then there was just light, bright light, and then impact, and then nothing." "What happened next, Mr. Sanchez?" "I woke up in the hospital. My wife was there, crying. She told me Emma was in surgery, that a drunk driver had run a red light and hit us, that the driver had tried to leave." His voice cracked. "My daughter almost died because someone thought their night out was more important than our lives." When Emma Sanchez took the stand, the entire courtroom seemed to lean forward. She was small for 9, pale, with a recent scar visible along her hairline. She walked with a pronounced limp, and when she settled into the witness chair, her feet didn't quite reach the ground. Judge Monroe's expression softened almost imperceptibly as he addressed her directly. "Emma, I know this might be scary, but I want you to know that you're very brave for being here. You just tell us what you remember, okay?" Emma nodded, gripping the arms of the chair. Her voice when she spoke was barely above a whisper. "I remember the lights, red and blue lights, and people talking really fast, and my mum crying. I couldn't feel my legs for a while. The doctor said I might not walk normal again." She looked down at her twisted foot. They were right. Throughout all of this, Victoria Hastings sat with an expression of studied boredom, occasionally checking her phone until Monroe ordered her to put it away, whispering comments to her attorney, never once looking at the people whose lives she had shattered. Her lack of remorse was so profound, so absolute, that even some of the reporters, trained to maintain objectivity, found themselves shifting uncomfortably in their seats. When the defense's turn came, Pemberton did his best. He brought in expert witnesses who questioned the accuracy of breathalyzer tests, who suggested the impact might have been less severe than described, who raised technical questions about police procedure. But it was like trying to hold back an avalanche with a snow shovel. The facts were the facts, and no amount of expert testimony could erase the image of a 9-year-old girl learning to walk again while the woman who had destroyed her life checked her phone in court. The final blow came when the prosecution played the dashcam footage from Officer Bradley's patrol car. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as Victoria, clearly intoxicated, laughed while being informed of the severity of Emma's injuries. They heard her say, clear as a bell, "It's just some kid. My father will make this disappear. This is ridiculous. Do you know how much my car cost?" The video ended. The silence was absolute. Pemberton stood for his closing argument, and to his credit, he gave it everything he had. He spoke of reasonable doubt, of the presumption of innocence, of the high burden of proof required in criminal cases, but his words felt hollow against the mountain of evidence. And even he seemed to know it. Sarah Chen's closing was surgical. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about accountability. It's about whether we live in a society where some people are above the law or whether justice truly is blind." Victoria Hastings made a choice that night, a choice to drink and drive, a choice that nearly killed a 9-year-old girl. And when confronted with the consequences of that choice, she made another choice: to flee, to minimize, to hide behind her father's name. The evidence is overwhelming. The law is clear. I trust you will do what is right. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the foreperson, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a firm voice, stood and delivered the verdict with absolute clarity. "We find the defendant, Victoria Hastings, guilty on all counts." Victoria's composure finally cracked. Her face went white, then red. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "This is insane! This is a joke! My father will—" The gavel came down with the force of thunder. "Ms. Hastings, you will sit down and you will be silent, or I will have you removed from this courtroom." For once, Victoria complied, though her body shook with rage. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. During that time, the case exploded across media outlets. Governor Hastings held a press conference where he spoke about his daughter's struggles with alcohol, about his family's pain, about how this was a private matter being politicized. But the tide of public opinion was against him. People were tired of watching the powerful escape consequences. They were tired of seeing wealth and connections used as get-out-of-jail-free cards. On the day of sentencing, Courtroom 7 was packed beyond capacity. Security had to turn people away at the door. Victoria entered with her father at her side for the first time. Governor Hastings, a tall man with silver temples and the kind of face that had won elections, looked diminished somehow, older than his 59 years. Judge Monroe took his seat, and this time Victoria stood without being asked. The fire in her eyes had been replaced by something else. Not remorse, but fear. The reality of her situation had finally penetrated the armor of her privilege. "Ms. Hastings," Monroe began, his voice carrying the weight of all his years on the bench, "you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers of driving under the influence, causing bodily harm, leaving the scene of an accident, and reckless endangerment. Before I pronounce sentence, you have the right to address this court. Do you wish to do so?" Victoria stood slowly. Gerald Pemberton had no doubt coached her extensively, but when she spoke, the words came out stilted, rehearsed, utterly devoid of genuine feeling. "Your Honor, I want to say that I'm sorry for what happened. I made a mistake that night. I've learned from this experience, and I hope that the court will show leniency." Monroe studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to the Sanchez family, seated in the front row. "Mr. and Mrs. Sanchez, would you or Emma like to make a statement?" Robert Sanchez stood, holding a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. "Your Honor, members of the court, I'm not a man of many words. I work in construction. I provide for my family. I teach my daughter to work hard, to respect others, to take responsibility for her actions. That night, Victoria Hastings nearly took my daughter from me forever. Emma will never run normally again. She has nightmares. She's afraid of cars. And through all of this, we've watched Ms. Hastings show not a single moment of genuine remorse." His voice strengthened. "I don't want revenge. I just want justice. I want her to understand that actions have consequences, no matter who your father is." Emma didn't speak, but she held up a drawing she'd made, a picture of her family holding hands, with a car in the background and the word "justice" written in careful 9-year-old handwriting across the top. Monroe's face was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes, something ancient and implacable. He opened the sentencing guidelines before him, took a moment to review them, then set them aside. When he looked up, his gaze fixed on Victoria with an intensity that made her take an involuntary step backward. "Ms. Hastings, I have been a judge for more than a quarter century. In that time, I have sentenced thousands of defendants. Some showed remorse, some showed defiance, some showed understanding of their crimes. But rarely, very rarely, have I encountered someone who demonstrated such complete and utter contempt for the law, for the victims of their actions, and for the very concept of justice itself." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "From the moment you entered this courtroom, you have behaved as though your father's position somehow exempted you from the rules that govern everyone else in this society. You refused to stand when ordered. You threatened this court with political interference. You showed no genuine remorse for nearly killing a child. Even your statement today rang hollow, words spoken because your attorney told you to speak them, not because you feel them." Victoria's attorney touched her arm, but she shook him off. "Your Honor, with all due respect, Ms. Hastings, you had your opportunity to speak. Now you will listen." Monroe's voice did not rise, but it somehow grew heavier, more absolute. "Your father is the governor. That is a fact that no one in this room disputes. But here is another fact. In this courtroom, your father's title means nothing. His influence means nothing. His political connections mean nothing. Here, we are all equal before the law, or we are nothing at all." The courtroom was so quiet that the sound of someone shifting in their seat seemed loud as a thunderclap. "You drove drunk. You nearly killed 3 people, including a 9-year-old girl. You fled the scene, and when confronted, your only concern was protecting yourself. You have shown no real remorse, no understanding of the magnitude of what you've done, no indication that you grasp the fact that you do not exist above the law." Monroe straightened the papers before him with slow deliberation. "The sentencing guidelines for your crimes suggest a range of penalties. I have considered those guidelines carefully. I have also considered your complete lack of remorse, your attempts to corrupt this court through intimidation and political pressure, and the profound harm you have caused. This court sentences you as follows: for driving under the influence causing bodily harm, 5 years in state prison; for leaving the scene of an accident, 2 years to run consecutively; for reckless endangerment, 1 year, also consecutive. Total sentence: 8 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole before serving a minimum of 6 years. The courtroom erupted. Reporters lunged for their phones. Governor Hastings stood abruptly, his face ashen. Victoria let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob, her legs seeming to give way beneath her. Gerald Pemberton caught her arm, already forming the words of an appeal in his mind. Monroe's gavel came down repeatedly, restoring order. Furthermore, he continued, his voice cutting through the chaos, upon release, Ms. Hastings will serve 5 years of supervised probation, during which time her driver's license will remain permanently revoked. She will complete 1,000 hours of community service working with victims of drunk driving accidents, and she will make full restitution to the Sanchez family for all medical expenses, lost wages, and pain and suffering, an amount to be determined by separate civil proceedings. He turned to face Victoria directly, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her unable to look away. Ms. Hastings, you came into this courtroom believing your privilege would protect you. You were wrong. You believed your father's name would shield you from consequences. You were wrong. You believed that wealth and influence could corrupt justice. You were wrong. Today, you learn what every citizen in this country must learn: that the law does not bend to power, that justice does not bow to privilege, and that in this courtroom everyone is equal. He lifted his gavel one final time. The defendant will be remanded into custody immediately to begin serving her sentence. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell with a finality that echoed like the closing of a door that could never be reopened. Victoria Hastings was led away in handcuffs, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor one last time, her perfect makeup now streaked with tears, her carefully constructed facade of superiority crumbling with each step. Governor Hastings watched his daughter disappear through the door that led to the holding cells, his face a mask of grief and disbelief. Gerald Pemberton was already on his phone, no doubt calling the appeals court, but everyone in that room knew the truth. Judge Elias Monroe's ruling was legally sound, thoroughly documented, and absolutely unassailable. The Sanchez family sat in their seats, Robert's arm around his wife, Emma between them holding her drawing. They weren't celebrating. There was no joy in this for them, only a quiet sense that something right had occurred, that the scales had balanced, that their daughter's pain had been acknowledged and valued by the law. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Judge Monroe remained at his bench, making notes in his files, with the same meticulous care he brought to every case. A reporter approached the bench, hoping for a quote, but Monroe simply shook his head. His work spoke for itself. His judgment stood on its own. There was nothing more to say. Outside the courthouse, news vans lined the street, cameras capturing the reactions of people who had come to witness justice in action. Some held signs supporting the Sanchez family. Others simply stood in quiet approval, nodding to themselves, satisfied that today, this one day, the law had worked the way it was supposed to work. In the weeks and months that followed, Victoria Hastings's case became a landmark, cited in law school, discussed in ethics courses, referenced whenever the question arose of whether America truly had equal justice under law. Governor Hastings's political career never recovered. He announced he would not seek re-election, citing family reasons. Gerald Pemberton filed appeal after appeal, each one denied, each one confirming what everyone already knew. The sentence was just, the verdict sound, the judgment final. Emma Sanchez continued her physical therapy. She would always walk with a limp, would always carry the physical reminders of that August night. But she also carried something else, the knowledge that when her family had needed justice, when they had stood as ordinary citizens against wealth and power and privilege, the law had protected them. Judge Monroe had protected them. And that knowledge, her parents told her, was worth holding on to. As for Judge Elias Monroe, he continued to preside over Courtroom 7 with the same quiet authority, the same unwavering commitment to justice that had defined his 26 years on the bench. He asked for no recognition, sought no praise, gave no interviews. He simply showed up each day and did his job, ensuring that in his courtroom at least, the promise engraved above the courthouse doors was more than just words: equal justice under law. Because in the end, that's what justice is. Not vengeance, not mercy, not compromise, but the simple, profound principle that the law applies to everyone equally, that no one is too wealthy to face consequences, that no one is too powerful to be held accountable, that no father's name, no political office, no amount of money can purchase immunity from the fundamental truth that when you harm others, when you break the law, when you endanger lives, you will answer for it in a court of law where your privilege means nothing and your guilt means everything. Victoria Hastings learned that lesson the hardest way possible, in handcuffs, in prison, in the years of freedom stripped away by her own arrogance and entitlement. But perhaps, somewhere in those years, in that prison cell, in the endless hours of reflection that incarceration provides, she might finally understand what Judge Monroe tried to teach her, that true strength comes not from the power you're born into, but from the character you build. That respect is not demanded, but earned. That dignity is found not in escaping consequences, but in facing them with honesty and humility. And perhaps when she finally walks free, older, wiser, stripped of her illusions, she will remember that morning in Courtroom 7 when a 63-year-old judge with silver hair and absolute conviction looked her in the eyes and showed her what justice really looks like. Not a gift, not a favor, not something that can be bought or manipulated or avoided, but a reckoning. Fair, impartial, and absolutely unavoidable. If this story reminded you that justice should be truly blind to wealth and privilege, show your support by hitting that like button below. Subscribe to this channel to see more stories where the powerful face the same accountability as everyone else. And drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, or simply type "Justice for All" if you believe the law should apply equally to everyone, regardless of who their father is or how much money they have. Because every time you engage with content that celebrates real justice, you're sending a message that we believe in a world where courtrooms are places of truth, not theaters for the privileged. Your like, your subscription, your comment, they all matter in keeping these principles alive.